I figure I will
You
just
might
take
as well.
advantage of the record button existing. Welcome to Neuroprovocateurs, where we're all completely fine.
Yeah.
This is fine. I'm fine. Riverside is fine. Our interfaces are fine. Our gear is fine. The deeds to our homes are clearly fine. Which brings us to our illustrious guest.
Wow, that was good.
Erika of the Ishii variety. So welcome, Erika. We invited you because you are a wonderful storyteller and bringer of tales in many formats.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
There are so many things that the Erika is doing. I am so curious. I was like, what even is the roster of the Erika currently? I am intrigued.
I am a voiceover actor, or I act in video games. I have I'm the lead I'm the player character in Dragon Age: The Veilguard. I'm Valkyrie in Apex Legends. I have the big one coming up in October. We have a release date now. Is The Ghost of Yote. Which has been something I've been working on for almost 3 years now.
Oh, wow.
And is very, very, very dear to my heart. And that one's especially wild because it is my face in it. Normally for voiceover for video games, it's either an animated character or just sometimes even if they capture your facial expressions, it's a different character model. But for this one, it is my face, my body, and yeah, it's
Whoa.
very exciting. It's people are gonna essentially be playing 80 hours of a movie as me, I guess. So that's
Whoa.
wild. And in addition, I am part of Dropout, an online comedy streaming platform. I play Dungeons and Dragons on there with Dimension 20, which is a bunch of comedians playing D&D together. And I'm on Game Changer, which is an insane game show. All of us had to draw tokens from a bag, and one of us was the secret sober and everybody else was drunk, and we had to figure out who was the secret sober. So that one just came out last week and was it's like a phenomenal cast of comedians, and it was all an all-femme group. And then I have a podcast called Worlds Beyond Number. It is an improvised storytelling podcast with Brennan Lee Mulligan, Abria Iyengar, and Lou Wilson. And we tell stories with the framework of a tabletop game. We're nearing the end of our first arc, of our first, we call it the first book, which Brennan has been game mastering for us, The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One. We've been doing that for 2 years now. And it's episode 50 is going to come out. Maybe by the time this comes out, episode 50 will be out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been terrific. I've run a couple of games for that as well. And so between podcast and video game voiceover and Dropout and various other things, it's been a busy. I am a working actor and storyteller, and that is something that I never thought I'd get to say. Commercial success is no indicator of quality or of your passion for it, but I just never thought that it would be possible to make a living as an artist, and especially in LA.
Well, and hearing also the diversity of the things that you do, I think, that's important too, that it's not like you're like, oh, I'm doing this one thing and this is the only way that I can be an artist in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I think, and as I think everybody gets older, our relationship to art and survival changes. You got to make a choice. Like the whole myth of the starving artist is not really tenable, especially not in times like these where, we have this feudal state of our healthcare being tied to our job.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have to figure out, like, do I want to live and live comfortably, or do I want to pursue my art full time? And I think in LA, especially, people's identities are very much wrapped up in their job. If they're not actively making a living or actively doing their art, they don't consider themselves like, an artist.
Yes. And I personally was very curious about the overlap of the fanciful ways in which we tend to lead our lives and how that overlaps with then how you choose to tell story. Because I'm like, in a way, like your entire life becomes a very exciting story you can tell.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. Abria and I call it never punished. In how we kind of live our lives, we say when we travel, whenever we travel, it doesn't matter. Like, it'll always work out. It doesn't matter if we miss our plane. Then suddenly the gate next door will have a flight open or something. It's just I'm very late, quite frequently late, and I'm forgetful. But I think actually with both my storytelling and I guess I should say I should say I am ADHD. I've been diagnosed and medicated since I was little. I stopped for a while and then went back on during pandemic. But like my life, both my life and my stories require a lot of framework and planning in order to be so chaotic. I think. I have a lot of safeguards, both in both. I think, in my life, I'm very fortunate now. Honestly, money makes everything better, like truly. When I was poor, I would park somewhere and forget that it was street sweeping and it would ruin my month, right? But now
Yep.
it's like I'm able to weather those a little more effectively. So, like, to be honest, I think like having money just makes having ADHD different, right? Like,
Yes.
if you put off a flight to the last minute, you can still afford the ticket. If you get a parking ticket, you can pay it. If all of the things, like, the money can be a stopgap for things, but also, having the framework of like leveraging it, like my color coded calendar, and my who I think my agents, my manager, and my assistant have access to, and just like planning everything out so that when I am late to things or when I do forget stuff, there is a framework in place to make it so that my life doesn't fall apart.
Pretty much. And you two bring up such a good point that one of the things that I see over and over again is that people will say, oh, well, then outsource the things that your brain is not so much doing. And it takes money to outsource, or it takes, frankly, kind of being a jerk. And I have seen people do that where they're like, well, I can't do this, so I just expect my partner to unbidden. Or like, oh, I'm going to just give this labor essentially to the people around me and it's going to work out because someone else has made it work. But I think it's really important to recognize that it's like we do have to acknowledge and compensate people who are making these things work. And so that is equally important for me, where I'm just like, yes, okay. If someone is helping me actually make these things function, I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging their time and efforts for that. Because
And
otherwise, yeah.
it's also, I see in a lot of people who do creative work who go like, I wish I had a assistant or operations manager, because I would ABC, or people I've been around who work in entertainment and have some kind of manager, or assistant, and there can very easily be this dynamic of, well, it's your job to clean up problems. But what I did was say, hey, Lydia, um, what problems can you figure out a system to prevent? And if the system is simple enough,
Ah.
then I can comply with the system. And then we're just, mostly just coasting unless life brings a surprise. So it's the compensation, but also like respect that you have brought in a person who is capable of
Yes.
figuring out better ways.
Well, and I don't know if either of you have this aspect, but if I create a system, I sometimes will try to game my own systems that I have set in place to make things easier for myself. And then I'm like, why am I defying myself? Like, I set up something nice for me and I'm like, but is there a way to get around this? And I'm like, come on, brain.
Well, that's why I need to outsource that to the framework, because then I can have people lie to me. Like, the whole
Yes.
point of having, like, a stage manager is so that they can, like, tell you when to be there, and the stage manager, when I did my off-Broadway run, like, would tell me sometimes a different time, like, 10 minutes earlier, and it worked, you know?
Yep. And also then we can channel all of our energy into the thing, because I don't know about you two, but that is often why I am late, is that when I'm woefully optimistic about what I can do during any span of time. And so I definitely try to smush too many things in one time, because since I'm excited about them, I think they don't take that much time. Like, it's a total mental distortion of that. But also then when I'm not as worried about like the systems that I have in place, then I can dedicate way more energy to kind of like, I don't know what to describe it as other than like the blue sky thinking that leads to the creative ideas, that leads to like my best songs, that leads to like a project like this, where it's like, because I'm not either freaking out about having done something kind of sideways, and I'm not trying to think of the system itself. It's all there. So I can just kind of like free range inside of that system.
Erica, for instance, I think you mentioned a color-coded calendar. How long did it take for you to arrive at these mitigation tactics that work for you? And also, how often do you have to like tweak them?
I feel like, I'm constantly trying to tweak things. Habit stacking sort of a thing. It's because things never become rote for me, really. I have a morning routine, and I do smoothie, matcha, skincare, these things, but like they never it's the order and time it takes to do them is not quite like automatic, and it's been that way for years. But I think during the time growing up, I took meds until I was in my late teens, early 20s, and then I stopped, both because the meds were bad, they were too much. I was kind of a zombie and, just sort of like missing parts of my life. And
Hmm.
also I got kicked off health insurance. So, early. I got
Mhm,
kicked off
mhm.
health insurance early, so couldn't get my meds, couldn't get my prescriptions. So I ended up sort of going through kind of a year of withdrawal and then not having meds for a while. And during that time, in order to function, I had to really, really focus, and everything was kind of a slog for a while. And so I built a lot of, sort of structures to kind of keep it together, and I think they managed to hold me over until one day I decided to have meds again, and it's a lot better now. It's like just the right amount, and I have good insurance, so I feel like just sort of a lot of years of trial and error and figuring out what worked for me and sort of just making it work at any cost, I guess, are the because yeah, I don't know what I did before. I think I had back in the day before like Google Calendars, I had like a day planner or something, but that's dangerous because it's a physical item you can lose.
Yes. The planners wander away from us.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Oh, ho, ho.
Yeah.
There was a period of, oh, I can just look. Yeah, there was a period of almost 3 years where I was back and forth between the US and Europe, like all the time. And I couldn't figure out how to get Google to like switch when I switched time
Oh
zones.
God, it would get stuck on the wrong time zone.
Oh,
Yeah. And so then I'm just the part of your brain that should go, no, I don't have a meeting at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's insane. I need to do math here. That part was not awake. So
nope.
I went back to one of these.
I respect it.
It's
It
heavy.
looks hardy. Because, yeah, like Erica, hearing about kind of the journey of figuring out what worked for you, like one of the things that I've always admired is how driven you are in your creative endeavors and how multifaceted they are. And it takes so much effort to not only have all of those ideas, but also like execute on all of those ideas. So that makes sense that there is a color coded system and much scaffolding that you've had to troubleshoot, because I'm like, yeah, otherwise there's no way you'd be able to actually do all of the wonderful things that you conceptualize. So,
Yeah, thank
yales.
you. Yeah, I think I really do, enjoy. I love like doing the work and doing the creative process is the joy and the thing that I love the most. But I do always want to share the really kind of unsexy parts that go into it, because I think that we have so much information about the creative process and about we have drama schools and master classes, but I feel like we don't talk much or demystify the whole business and the whole logistics aspect of it, because I would say
Yes.
that sort of my background, and I was mass media communications in college, and I'd say that plus so many of the other, that crazy framework that I built has been even more instrumental, at least in my commercial success as an artist.
Yeah.
My art and my creative, and that's always the thing that, of course, is I'm always working on and always trying to grow in. But the sort of business logistical side of being a creative has really, honestly, I think, set me apart from a lot of the people that who I believe were much better actors than me, in school or in plays growing up. But it's just the sad reality that we can't just kind of be good creatives on our own.
I was thinking about what you said, Erica, in terms of like things I see within, especially like the local music scene in Los Angeles and its evolution over time, that I see so many artists that I thought were going to be like the next big thing because they were so good. But I learned over
Yeah.
time, and it became in a way like both discouraging and encouraging, that it wasn't always the people that I thought were actually the most talented that had the most success. It was the people that literally just kept going. And that there are
Yep.
some people that I didn't expect would like reach, kind of like places in their career that I didn't anticipate, not because I, didn't think that they were good people or things like that, but it's like that it's just that they kept going and they kept doing the thing and they kept doing the thing differently and like in different avenues, and it's like that's what's led to more success. And I see that now in some ways, and by success it's not just like money, but like kind of like, do they feel creatively fulfilled, are they playing shows, are they licensing the music, like whatever it is that someone has chosen to do. So it's interesting to see that it's almost like the scaffolding behind it that keeps people going. So I have noticed that in that arena. And I also am so glad that a lot of the people that I've seen for years in LA are seeing like the success that they deserve. That always makes me really happy when I see my
Yeah.
peers get like a placement somewhere or like blow up on TikTok. I'm like, yeah, that's right. They're awesome. Everyone should
It's
know.
great. That's been the wild thing too, yeah, of being like an artist in LA for, I mean, I guess my whole life since I'm from here, but like, just sort of being part of even the improv and convention scene since about 2012, and all those people that we started out with, doing little midnight shows at UCB are, they have their own shows, they're staff writers, a lot of people ended up at Dropout, and it's been pretty crazy to see, and not surprising in terms of the talent and the good-heartedness of the people that have succeeded in at least in my circles, but just in terms of it's such a rarity that can happen. It is kind of like the Cinderella dream.
Yeah.
But seeing it over the course, seeing it happen over the course of 15 plus years has been, suddenly one day you look back and you all are different people,
Yeah.
and doing the things that you said you wanted to do.
Yeah. Jess, you look like a proud grandma, and I love it. Go on.
I'm turning in to my grandmother. Anyway, so
Got a long enough
my
timeline, we
favorite
all
grandmother,
do.
very happy. I'm like, yes, this is exactly who I wanted to be when I grew up. So there's the business scheduling, financial structure that is required to make a living as a creative worker. And then there's also the structure required to document and record the idea that a creative project will be made out of, right? Like film, it's like, yeah, we're gonna make a script, and like, I know, like storyboards, like I'm sure with music there's stuff on a scale from color-coded Excel spreadsheet to, gosh, that's a lot of post-its with bits of string on your wall. What's your
What does the Erika process look like?
Yes.
For the logistics, I would say it differs from project to project. I think, in terms of creative, it's really nice to have the logistical structure. The way I think of it, like my studio out here, that I'm in my booth right now at my little studio, and in my studio is usually like very tidy. Like I have like labels on everything. I love my label maker. I have everything. Like there's a place for everything, and everything is in its place. But project to project, the other day I had like a board game out on the floor, and I literally had the sticky notes and the red string, and I love fountain pens, and I had like different inks and fountain pens on the floor, and it was sort of the night before I needed to do this, to run this game, and I was sort of scrambling on the floor with index cards, and so it like, but because there's that was the only thing out of place, so that meant that I could like focus all of my attention on that, and I wasn't like, what is the, like, what are these extra sticky notes, are these from another project? Or so yeah, I think what was it, Herbie Hancock or somebody said you have to practice really, really hard to get you practice a lot of times to get the perfect improvisation. Or something that in that, I'm butchering it, but that was something my dad told me, I think, which really stuck with me. And I think it's kind of that, where like I will do so much on the outsides, at any moment, not acting or in the booth or filming or doing the creative process, which is the thing we all love so much, is doing emails and color coding the schedules and tidying. I have little times in my calendar where I'm like, just a day for tidying up, and I find it kind of therapeutic and sort of zen to be tidying and sweeping, and it's just really nice to see everything get together. You play those kinds of video games, I think, like, I
I
remember.
pretend I'm my own Katamari, where I'm just like, how many things can I pick up and put in
Yeah!
place?
Yeah, exactly.
What's a Katamari?
It's an old video game where you're a little prince and you have this very sticky ball and you roll it around on things and you just have to pick up, like it will stick to small things at first and then bigger and bigger and bigger things until you can roll up like trees and
Livestock.
lakes and mountain ranges and, planets. Yeah. So it's yeah, like there's something really satisfying about it too. Cause then it's like, they turn into stars. You need enough gravitational pull for it to become a star, but it's like you're cleaning everything. You're like sucking everything up, Just very satisfying. Very satisfying.
Yes, Jess.
I want to make stars out of dust bunnies.
Yeah. It's great. It's great.
It's so satisfying. Yeah, and also like you spoke to something that I feel is very vital to my process as well, where I have a space where I create stuff. And I'm very particular about that because that way, like you said, you can sit down and you're in the creative space. Like you don't have to like prep things. Because if I have to do any steps to prepare things, I am less likely to do it.
Steps. Yes, steps are the real enemy here. I think I'm very fortunate. I take all my meds. Before that, it was just really truly impossible, to even get started or like stay on track. And even now, yeah, the more steps that there are in a process, the more I sort of dread it and put it off. But
Yes.
it's, at least I can sort of get started. And like I have a lot of, again, the color coded list, I have very granular to-do lists, right? So it's
Yes.
like daily, like must get done to do, things to schedule, things like the grocery list, like super granular. Because otherwise, if it's just too big a step, I cannot ingest it.
Yes.
Like I still can't bring myself to implement like certain safeguards, right? Like I know I
Yes.
would be a lot more productive if I like deleted certain apps off of my phone, but I can't, like that is a thing, like that is like my little allowance that I allow myself,
I feel that it is in some ways because of perhaps the where did the deed go, that since we do not dedicate the energy to where did the deed go, that is why we get the extraordinary bonuses to all of the other ideas that we have. Because if our brains knew where the deed was, maybe there wouldn't be room for some of the other exciting things.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I didn't realize how abnormal it was. I mean, I was very, 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 very fortunate in that my mom would, had me diagnosed in third grade, and it was kind of a struggle. It was a struggle for everybody involved. But I'm just grateful that she both recognized that there was something up and wanted to get help for me and, was open to that. That was very rare for the time. I think it was just before the wave of a bunch of people getting diagnosed. And as we all know, even to this day, it's underdiagnosed in femmes.
Yep.
So my parents had my back the entire time, against like really terrible teachers and administrators. So I'm very, very lucky about that. But I think, there wasn't as much public knowledge about things back then or even up until very recently. And being able to compare experiences with people was fairly rare. And so understanding now things that are normal and easy and actually easy for other people that I'm like, oh, are not easy for me due to this it has been very helpful to understand, oh, well, okay, this isn't easy for me. And that's not because, of I can't work hard to make it better. It just has to, like, there has to be some sort of concrete answer to it. And now on the internet, there are a lot of things, where people are like, this is how you trick yourself into brushing your teeth every night, sort of a thing. Because it's like,
Yeah.
in my head, I was like, well, I know I'm ADHD, but I know, like, I don't know, maybe that's just a me thing. So anyway, just access to community and to sort of shared brain cell is definitely a benefit of the great World Wide Web.
Yes.
So, first of all, with all of this shared brain cell rhetoric, are we all orange tabby cats? Is that there's
I feel like I want to have the elegance of a black cat, but that I actually am an orange cat. Like I want to be cool like a black cat, even though black cats are notorious for like being the actual goofiest. But I feel like actually I am the orange cat that's just wandering around doing things that you wouldn't expect.
okay, my follow-up question is if are we all sharing us and the cats the one
The one brain
brain cell?
cell. So does
I
that mean
don't.
Pixel Kitty
I
has the brain
actually,
cell?
I'm gonna push back on that because they don't. Like if I could live my life sunning myself and being fed at regular intervals by somebody else, and just like having just like a carefree life without deadlines, like I would be such a different person. I wouldn't need that brain cell. I would get rid of it, give it to somebody else. Like I don't like what would I need it for? But now it's like I need that. I need that. So I think that they share of the brain cell for like eat food, don't like land on feet, do not eat poison plant, and like we have like I don't share that.
That's the key part for me is like I feel like the softer my life is, like I feel very grateful that I do have a human that does make food for me and asks when I eat and what I ate and maybe when. And I don't know the answers to really any of those questions. Um, when things are happening, who could say? I'm like, consult the oracle, which is the calendar. If it is not on the
Mhm.
calendar, it does not exist. But having someone do that because he likes doing that, and I appreciate that so much that, like, then I find myself being able to be more curious about things. Then I am kind of wandering around being the smushed faced cat, seeing what I can get into, not to cause trouble, but because I'm like, oh, my food dish is full. I'm going to forget my food dish exists in like 2 minutes, but like, how exciting. I don't have to worry about the food dish. And like, and so then my brain can kind of explore elsewhere. And so I find that like the more I have that in place, it's not that like I am not curious and driven to do things. It was actually a client that asked me one time, they're like, how do you think of all these things to do? And I'm like, I actually am not sure how to answer that question because I don't know how to not think of things to do, particularly when I'm quote idle. That's when I
Mm.
think of even more things to do. Like I'm not good at that. Like, and someone's like, oh, I want to go sit on the beach for 2 weeks and do nothing. Like that would actually be very challenging for me. Like I'm not sure how to do that. Like I do definitely need kind of like my like down regulation time, like kind of in, like my meditation time or journaling in the sunroom or things like that, or like going on like a long hike by myself in Griffith. Like those are kind of my down times. But after a few hours of those, I'm pretty hyped to do something. Like I don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Twice in
Yeah.
my life, I've tried to take like an actual vacation, not like, oh, I am going somewhere for work, and so I
Mhm.
will stay a couple of days early or stay a couple of days after and like see a thing, but I'm going to relocate somewhere without my
Yes.
books and with not enough socks for how long I'm going to be gone and do nothing. And it always drives me completely unhinged. Like I'm like,
Yep.
no, the third time is not a charm in this
Nope.
case. No. And like it's just not for me.
No.
It
I
doesn't matter how
respect
many
it.
books I bring. Yeah.
Yeah, like what you were saying about, like the starving artist myth, it's something that I ended up talking to a lot of people on the last podcast I did on Why Not Both, that it's like there's this myth that if you are not either like making all of your income from art, that you're not really an artist. Or there's also the myth of like you have to be uncomfortable in that way to be an artist, when in fact the
Yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah.
right? Like the people I know that are making art consistently are not consistently on the verge of, say, like losing their homes, like, because then you're consumed with being like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my home, or oh my God, I don't have healthcare. Like, you're too consumed with survival to then be like, yeah, I'm going to make art about it. Like, the people I know that then make art about it is after then they've gotten to a place of at least relative safety. And then you can make art about it. But to keep people in this weird frame of mind of you always have to be the underdog, then it's almost like then once you have the thing, but you still have that mindset, like you then sometimes, I've also seen this, people who perceive themselves as struggling when they're not. And then you're like, hey, you're
Or
kind of
they,
lying face down in a puddle and there's all this dry
yeah,
sidewalk
and
around
it's
you.
like,
And
you can
people are like,
just
no, 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 I'm
solve
drowning.
this.
And you're like, what?
You can just solve this with money. Like, truly,
Yeah.
I've told that to friends before, and I'm like, you have money. You can
Yeah.
solve this. You don't have to live like this anymore. And
Yeah.
I think there is sort of like a guilt associated with it, sometimes a survivor's guilt, and I understand that. And also, it's the whole thing of capitalism where it's how they keep us in line. These sort of narratives, like people, it is such a myth. Because like
Yeah.
sometimes it's in, and oftentimes it's perpetuated in order to like create a narrative around somebody or their life, or to be like, well, you can't really, you should have to struggle in order to be an artist. It's not like we can
Right.
pay artists a universal benefit and stuff just to
Right.
live. It's not like people deserve to live. You gotta hurt yourself for your art. But I think I'm very grateful to people like Sam Reich, who wanted to specifically create a middle class for
Yeah.
entertainers in new media.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're here. That's crazy.
I was like, you're doing the thing, and Jess, you look like you're about to explode with a point in the best way possible.
Well, the intense telegraphing through body language is due to the fact that I have two equally relevant and compelling points. So, like, which one? So historically, society demands that entertainers suffer, right? I don't know how much of it is due to like, oh, you're kind of weird, so we got to punish you for that somehow, even though the way you express your weirdness is entertaining. So we appreciate it. And so therefore, to balance the appreciation, you must be punished that much more. So I also don't know how much of it is perceptions of like entertainers make a lot of money, which may or may not be true. But then gets into this complicated, like, well, yes, actually, some do make a lot of money, and then a lot of that money goes right back out the door to pay for what is required to operate at this level. Some of which is, yes, money can fix that.
When I get paid for any of my artistic endeavors, the first thing that happens is I pay the people that helped make it happen. I pay for supplies. I pay for the gear that made it happen. Like all of those things that it's like, oh, even if I do make money off of something, it's not like I'm just sitting here like Scrooge McDuck.
I mean, that's what, our society and what capitalism says to do is that, and then again, it plays into that myth of like, well, you struggled so much, and you're a self-made man now, and it's like, all the other people can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And in order to sort of get ahead, you need to sort of scrimp and save, and somebody needs to get fucked, it's all not true. And it's very interesting. I think but people don't know because, all of our lives we've been told these things and, we've seen it play out and we just think that's how it is. And I think, the middle class itself is just disappearing. I can't imagine, our parents' generation was able to have like single income households, or buy houses, just on regular jobs.
Yeah.
That, and I can't imagine that, these days it's just not possible, but to have it and to like want to build that back up is, Sam says he doesn't want people to put the company on a pedestal. There are corporations still, but like, yeah, it's just not a business ethos I've ever seen before in entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did we actually mention the name of Sam's company and I missed it?
Oh yes, Dropout. So Sam Reich is
Okay,
the
okay.
CEO, the owner of Dropout, which is the subscription, like a little paywalled comedy service that started out in a bankrupted college humor, which was a like a YouTube channel. So it he turned it into something successful, and then he shared that success with everybody else because we have profit share. Um, we get contracts. We're paid incredibly competitive rates. That Vulture, I think, just actually published an article where they disclosed almost all the rates that performers made. And it is like they're saying like twice the amount that you get on comparable like network TV game shows for a game changer. And
Wow.
for tabletop, it is uh especially for like the main cast and for people who are in like core casts, like very generous. And granted, most of us only work the equivalent of like a month's work, like 30 days for the year, but it is like incredible compensation for our time and energy, and I've never had that at any other company before. I never wanted to be a boss. I am to a certain extent a boss now, but like, yeah, I don't know how you do it, Pam.
I'm in the same boat where I
Wow.
did not it was interesting. I was talking to a coach who was talking about like business strategy and things like that, and she was like, "Well, what led you to want to become a leader?" And I was like, "That's so interesting that you presupposed I wanted to be a leader." I'm like, "What?" Like it did
Mm-mm.
not that was not my motivation for doing this. Like one of the things in that session I did with her was she had me list like my values, and I realized my like the top 3 of the 10 that I ended up listing were connection, creativity, and curiosity. And she
Mm.
said, "You're the first client I've ever had a session with who didn't write success." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I realized, and what I blurted out was, "Oh, well, I already presupposed success. Like that's like not a
Mm.
question. Like I already know that things are going to go the way they're going to go. So this is what I value. And so when I'm acting as a quote leader, like these are the things that I'm putting into action. And so like it's not about success. It's not about like meeting a metric. It's not about whatever that feeling is." And so like it is weird that now I'm technically like the leader of a practice, or I'm, like then the leader of whatever it is that we are doing creatively. But I don't consider myself a leader in the traditional sense of like, I'm the one that has to tell people what to do. It's because I value the connection and creativity and curiosity that I'm just like, "Oh no, we're going to succeed. It's going to be awesome, whatever it is." But like it's predicated on those
Mm.
things. So it's actually predicated on the connection to everyone else. But yeah, like I guess, and Erica, you said something that intrigued me about that your parents were supportive, but at the same time, because there was not as much representation, that even though you had support and advocates, that you didn't see a lot of yourself reflected. And in a way, like because I didn't see myself reflected, I just presupposed that either A, everyone was somehow like much better at these things but good at hiding it, and I'm just like, wow, they're sure good at hiding that these things are hard. Or I guess that everyone else was just having a very different experience than me, which in a way gave me more empathy because I don't presuppose someone's having the same experience as me then. So I'm more curious about their experience, I guess.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, empathy is, you both work in a practice and have a more clinical knowledge of the human patterns and behaviors. But I think empathy development is deeply situational. Like maybe you had to develop that because of your because of your neurodivergence, but I feel like also most likely because you're a femme, and it is just sort of de rigueur for femmes
Yes.
and for anybody who's marginalized to develop empathy, just both as a survival mechanism and because there's just no alternative, because you don't see your experiences mirrored as often, or you definitely didn't prior
Right.
to like in back in our day, and so you just had to. you
Right.
know?
And I'm so glad that you're bringing stories like to light, that people, like when you said that people get to play basically like 80 hours as your
Yeah.
avatar. Like
It's great, because I think I wanted to tell the stories that I didn't get to see in the world and that I so sorely craved, and now I'm getting a chance to, and the thing that I hear the most, my metric of success is that, I have people telling me it's just such a relief to see this kind of experience or background mirrored in a way that I've never gotten to see before, because I didn't have that, and so that is, the accolades of my friends and and people being able to relate to experiences, is for me just sort of like greatest joy and honor in my life.
that, that makes me want to give hug.
This is where I have more of like a clinical sort of understanding of it with mass media communications
Yeah,
background.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yes.
that is a
Yes.
thing that is very deeply studied and I don't think understood by most Americans who are like, well, I don't understand. Like, it's okay. The Japanese like it, and it's like, well, yeah, but that's because they, think that all American, like, that's because they have this view of Americans, and they get to see a diverse, and yet all Japanese depiction of themselves all the time.
Oh, yeah. I was like, oh my God, the cultural immersion in regards to media because of what gets exported. And like, same thing
Yeah.
in reverse of like American view of Japanese culture, where it's like
Mhm.
we only get these kind of like, if something doesn't fit the narrative of what we assume of a culture based on its
Yes.
media, we're kind of just like, oh, well, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
There's not, we have this idea of what's authentic or not.
yes.
And it ever all their other countries do too. But when a lot of times when introduced to the concept of the less monolithic nature of a culture, they're like, oh, this is interesting, and I think that curiosity is deeply underestimated, I think, by executives.
Little backstory moment. I have for about 14 years had a licensing deal with a company that sells replicas of the outside of my vulva with like a fun texture inside. And it is an
Mm.
endlessly strange experience for me. You would think that after 14 years, it's just like, yeah, that's just like part of my life. But
Mm.
no, every year there's some new angle on it where I'm like, yeah, that's the strangeness just unfurls. And so I'm imagining that there must be something interesting about the knowledge that people in a video game will be interacting as not just your voice, but also your fit. Like it's more layers of parts of you that they're inhabiting. What's that preemptively like?
Um, it's odd because there is a certain amount of distance still because I'm playing a character, and the speech patterns and personality are fairly different than mine. Of course, as an artist, you put a little bit of yourself into everything you do, so there's a bit of a distance, but at the same time, it is very odd, especially the level of immersiveness involved, I think. And there's been much discussion has been had about how video games are empathy machines, and it allows you to inhabit the life and mind and perspective of another character. It kind of depends on how, I mean, media literacy and levels of empathy are deeply situational. So I don't some people might just be going around killing people and not really trying to skip cutscenes and not really engaging with the narrative or with the fact that it's me. But and some people might really sort of be affected by it. And it's just, not, once I put my work out there, it's kind of out of my hands. And especially since it's so many other animators and and programmers and artists and like have, their input into that creative output. So, but is it weird? Yes. Yes, it is weird. It will always be weird. It's a jump scare experience every time I see my face there, but I'm just so grateful for it.
That's fascinating to think about because I thought of two things in different contexts that people said to me. Like, one, when someone says like my song gets stuck in their head, like if there's a song that I've written that I'm just like, oh my God, like I've become someone's earworm. But also then
Yeah.
when a client says like, oh, I was about to do XYZ, but I imagined what your response would be. And I was like, oh my God, you've internalized like my personality somehow.
Yeah, there's a part of you that's like deeply personal that somebody else has found connection with, and that's really lovely.
Yeah. I'm like, oh. And that's weird to think of like how Jess and you, Erica, pointed out of like that it can be external and internal of like, then how does that change someone's thought process if they're like, oh, well, what might Pam say about this? And so sometimes I get not like in my head about it, but I realize that like in my work, I want to be really careful about like kind of saying things that ascribe to how I would live my life. Like when clients have run into me outside of sessions, they've said like, oh, it's actually really comforting that you're just like you. And I'm like, well, yeah, if I'm saying something to you inside a session, it's not something that like I wouldn't put into practice outside of my life, because I'm like, oh my God, if people are like internalizing the things I'm saying, I better be speak with integrity.
I mean, to a certain extent, when you play a character, it's like there are times you definitely don't want people to conflate you with the character. And I do
Yeah.
say things that I would hope nobody would take to heart. But yeah, it just in terms of, being a public figure, as Jessica was saying, there's an added responsibility because people can see, more people can see you, and they are more intimately familiar with you, or at least they know more about you than you know about them. They
Right.
don't necessarily have context for everything.
And like you said, empathy is situational, which I think is very important. That
Deeply.
like also what we choose to show, either like I would say in my art, I show less than I show even sometimes as a clinician, where it's like I show a certain aspect of myself that I've enhanced through story and sound, like an experience, like I've shown an emotion, but
Yeah.
that's not necessarily like a how-to guide. But yeah, like it is devoid of context when someone is seeing me like in a session once a week, or if someone's listening to one of my songs, they're not living the rest of the experience around that. And I had not thought of it that way until right now, and I'm just like thank you for blowing my mind. I am going to ponder that with my orb.
Excellent. Well, thank you for chatting with me.
Thank you so much.
And I'm glad we all, got collected ourselves and our technology and made this happen.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited that we got to do this. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Neuroprovocateurs. Please join us on Substack, where you can find exclusive clips, resources, and community of the neurospicy variety. We are an independent podcast, so know that your support on Substack and beyond means the world to us, quite literally. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to leave us 5 stars and glowing reviews, and follow our podcast on your preferred podcast platform so that you can be sure to get each episode the moment it drops, and know that your reviews help us get in front of other people who might also want to listen to this podcast. We are on social media in all of the usual places as Neuroprovocateurs. Thank you again, and excited to see you for our next episode.